Okay, let's do another session playbook signal review. And today we've got one in gold. We're going to rock and roll through this and hopefully get some insight into what we're trying to do here. So, as a just upfront, make sure we're all on the same page. What we're looking for in terms of playbook ideas and where these come from is from the key principles that are part of our development pathway. So, how do you get to a place where you're like, I know what to trade next? That's because you have a perspective on the auction. The question for today, as is anytime we do one of these sessions, is what does your playbook look like right now? What triggers you into a trade? So that is a question to always think about introspectively of, what are you looking to do? What does good look like? So what does your playbook look like? And then what does trigger you into a trade? And I'm just going to mute everybody but me for the time being. All right. Okay. I asked this question, and we'll do this every time we do one of these sessions because it's been the oft experience that most retail traders define an opportunity based on a trigger. So there's some type of behavior that they see in the market, typically in a short time frame if they're looking to operate as a day trader, and that is what triggers them into the trade. But there's a key distinction between retail brain and institutional / professional brain, or someone who wants to last long in this industry, and that is that you're defining the opportunity based on the destination first. So all of these playbook ideas that we look at for each one of these sessions, we're always going to start with where do we believe the auction is going to go, and then we can define the opportunity around that. The objective for this session, like any of these others, is just really to learn a playbook idea and observe how to prepare for it, anticipate it, and execute a 4-question playbook trade. What is a 4-question playbook trade? I'm so glad you asked. A 4-question playbook trade is a trade that answers these 4 questions that I believe, it's my conviction. And conviction is not dogma. Conviction is a hard-won perspective. It is open to be challenged, but yet it is something that I believe very strongly. I believe that if you don't have an answer to these 4 questions, then you don't have a trade. So until you answer those, there's nothing to do. What are those 4 questions? You may already know them, and you're like, oh my gosh, don't say the name again. But what is the opportunity or the target? So this is to that idea of what's the destination? What are we trying to go to? The idea that we'll look at today, just like any others, it's always based on where do we believe that the auction is going to go, what makes that attractive, and then what am I willing to risk for this opportunity? What in a reward to risk opportunity, once we've identified the destination that we're looking for, what are we willing to risk for that? And is that attractive from a risk reward standpoint? Once I'm in this, what will tell us that I'm right? What tells us that we made the right call? And then what would tell us that we made the wrong call? Like what shouldn't happen once we get into this? Those are all questions that we'll want to have answered before we enter. Okay. And they are used as the foundation for a playbook trade. Again, a playbook trade is a defined trading idea that can be exploited. It has an edge, and it uses those 4 questions that we ask and answer. It is a pattern of auction behavior that can be repeated, categorized, and tracked. This is important when you're trying to move toward becoming a consistently profitable trader, is moving towards the idea of having an anchor trade. Where am I good? Not just lucky, but like where am I good? And it's a pattern of auction behavior that we can prepare for, anticipate with patience, and execute with confidence. All right. These are all of my 4-question playbook setups. So whenever I take a trade, I think about one of these. Each of these represent different answers to those 4 questions, so that I have an idea already in my mind of how that should go, or what that should look like. If you want a great framework for how to think about playbook trades, I would refer you to Mike Belafore and his book, One Good Trade. And he talks about what they do at S&B. I think this is really great. That one good trade combines your thesis plus a setup from your playbook, plus confirmation from the tape or the order flow, plus a fight for price, and that equals one good trade. So this is significantly different from where many people think about their narrative as that's the trade. That is not the trade. That's context. But it is the place that I find that trade. But so I've got the narrative. Here's a trade I think could be in play. Now I'm looking at the setup. I know the piece of that. Now I've got to like drill down and fight and ensure that in a smaller time frame it's where I want to be, and then execute. And that is one good trade and something that we can repeat over and over. Okay. Now the signal that we're going to look at today is an initial balance extension go with. All right. So I got a notice early today that showed this alert. So I got an alert for an IBGW in gold. All right, so let's talk about the IBGW real quick, and then let's go through this trade. What does an initial balance extension go with? So like all playbook trades, and even if you're trying to develop your own playbook trade, the question is, what is the driving input for this playbook setup? What is the one observable behavior that this auction is exhibiting that tells me that this could possibly be in play? And for this specific setup, the initial balance extension go with, it's pretty easy. We extend the initial balance range. So the initial balance range being the range of the first hour of trade, and we have extended that. So high and low first hour, we've now extended that. What is our expectation? So that driving input is that it's been extended. What's our destination that we're looking for? So that's going to be 1.5 the width of that initial balance, or a significant auction reference in that direction. So it's going to be outside of the initial balance when I say 1.5. So whatever the width of that first hour's range is, I'm looking for at least 50% more of that range in the destination, or some type of structural reference. Now, that's driving input, and then there's the destination. As we get into this, there's additional confidence pieces. So this is where a trader can start drilling down, saying, what other things would be in place that would give me confidence in this specific playbook idea? Okay, so let's walk through those for an IB go with. And these are the same if it's an IB go with long or an IB go with short. Okay, so let's start with one. I had a directional open. So if I have a directional open, that is giving me confidence that we've got a good opportunity. Second, I'm one time framing on a 30-minute basis. I'm seeing higher highs and higher lows. I have 50% of the expected range of the session left. So this goes to us being able to extend or stacking probabilities in our favor by having plenty of range out in front of us, because when we take an IB go with, often we're looking to extend that range. The IB, the width itself, is narrow to average. So we track that on a 30 calendar day basis. We know what an average width the initial balance is, and so we're in that range or below that. There's a skew in the profile toward the IB high. So we've got some bullish imbalance or bearish imbalance relative to whatever we're looking for that says that we need to yet tip the scales in one direction or the other. The IB broke from a composite value reference. So that means that we essentially started from composite value or multi-time frame value, and now we've extended beyond that. The prior session was balanced. So because it's a go with. So this is a trade that we're looking to extend. We want movement that is heightened by the prior session being more rotational. There's noticeable slope to the session VWAP. We've not yet hit 1.5 the IB, and there is a clear magnet ahead. I think there's one more favorable relative position to the Euro IB high or IB low relative to whatever you're looking for. So now, does every IB GW have all of these? No, it does not. But these are all pieces, and the more of these pieces that are in play, the more confident I am in the opportunity. Okay, so specifically, do I have expected range left? Was the IB narrow to average? Am I seeing one-time framing? Like those are definitely more important to me than just about anything else. So now let's go look at this specific example and see what we can see. So in this specific example, we've got this IBGW in gold. The target. So in this case, the target is 1.5 the IB. So that's 3393.4. So we'll kind of tune that based on this. In terms of playbook score, so 7 out of the 11 are in play. So pretty good playbook score, right? One that is, I think, pretty noticeably missing is that we don't have that. We don't have 50% of the expected range left. We're also not one time framing. So, and the prior session was bound. So like there are definitely holes in this, but the driving input is there. So I now have this set up for us to do replay here. And I'm going to take us to the point where we extend the initial balance. And let's kind of talk through this situation and what's the expectation. So here's that 93.5. It's basically 1.5 the IB. What else, is out in the way that's interesting to me, in this perspective is I've got some singles to clean up. So I've got some structure. So when we talk about, looking for 1.5 the IB or some type of structure, there's some untested structure here. There's also, pretty good composite node for the week. That's the weekly profile that's out there. Now notice this is the full ETH profile. So on this one specifically, when it's like this and I have exhausted already the expected range of the product, I am more likely to be kind of a write or write out scenario because I've already used a lot of firepower. I mean, you can see from where we had closed the prior session, there had been quite a reversal. Now, there is a directional open. It's an open drive higher, and that's from a composite reference, meaning it's from the most traded price of the week. So that's all good. But I don't quite have skew here. You notice there's a little bit, like skew would be if we were like this in the profile, and we're not quite there. But we've got enough of the pieces here. Let's now go and look at a smaller time frame. So we're going to go down to a 30-second time frame. So I'm going to mark a couple things here. So I've got these singles, and we're going to go down to a 30-second time frame. And we're going to see if we can find an area that we like to enter this. Once it's extended. Okay, so let's play this back. Oh, wow. All right. So on the extension of the IB, we've got pretty, decent strength here. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead, and again, we're looking for that destination. So let's get our replay here, and we're going to do this in the full contract. We're going to do this at 1 times speed. And so as long as this 30 seconds holds, we're going to use basically the base of where that buying stepped in. We're just going to have to go with it. So see the strength that came in right here at 86.8. We should not go back through that price. We're out into above the initial balance high. So on IB go with, we should stay outside of the initial balance. We should not go back through these buyers. If you go back through these buyers, then no bueno. Okay, we're getting ready to start a new 15-minute here. We did clean up those singles, so that's good. And let's see if we get some responsive activity back into this direction that can allow us to continue to go. Now there were some sellers that stepped in there. And this may be a bridge too far given how much range we've already used in the day. Now remember, the distinction between an IB, I'm going to pause this real quick. Distinction between an IB go with and an IBGP. Right? So if it's a go with, that means I'm going with from the IB. I'm outside of the initial balance. So if I get back inside the initial balance, that's not really an IB go with anymore. So in this case, strictly, this is negating that IB go with, because I'm now coming back to, so if very quickly, if I don't get back above like 33.90, then this is completely off the table. Now, an IBGP could be in play, still looking for that 1.5, the IB, but that means that we could see rotation back through the initial balance down toward 82.8. I don't know that I want to take that much heat, but let's just see how this plays out. Like I said, if I go back through where those buyers stepped in, I'm out. We definitely have some sellers that are creating some excess. Let's see if they hold. Or not. I mean, we're literally watching like right back to where that pop was. So if we go back through that, which it looks like that's what's going to happen, is we're going to go back through that and we're going to be out. So what tells me that what should not have happened here. So you have a spike. Fine if it comes back a little bit, but then it should have been able to push quickly this way. The fact that we immediately came back through the point of entry says, and you can see all the selling imbalance. Yeah. That's all clues that this is it's not right, and very unlikely to work. So we're going to get stopped here. Okay, and that's it. Now, let's pause, because this is always the thing that happens when we look at playbook trades. Is the opportunity still there? To get to 1.5, yes. To get to that composite node at 93.6, yes. What would have to happen to get me back and interested in it in an IB go with? I would have to get back through. Where'd my mouse go? I would have to get back through these impulsive sellers that came in here right off of the trailing CPI VWAP. So I'd have to get back outside the IB and back above, let's call it 33.90 to even consider that opportunity. But I'll go ahead and have some stops out here in the event that happens, but I'm essentially on the sidelines. Okay, so let's see if it plays out, and we can get back up there at some point, quickly. Get rid of this. And this is a really important piece of, okay, yeah, it didn't work out the way I had in my head what I believe would happen. So I can get back to the sidelines. I'm not trying to fight something anymore. And now I can say, okay, is there a spot that I might be more interested in? So, maybe it's not an IB go with, or IB go with on a pullback. Given that we have a pretty narrow initial balance range, if I could trade back through the IB, get down to 33.82, I might be interested in an IB go with on IB pullback. That's hard to say, isn't it? Feels like I made a really good decision here. Okay, so this looks like an interesting spot to re-enter. We came back to test the VWAP and the prior high, and I see some buyers stepping in, and we are at the developing point of control. So this is not a go with, because I'm inside the initial balance. So this is on a pullback. All right, so let's look at how this plays. So let's go to 1x. Now for this one, I will allow it to go down here and potentially add to 33.82, but beyond that, I will not, because if we go neutral, then I'm wrong and I'll get out of the trade. In fact, if we go I'm going to reduce a little bit of size if we go below that buyer. Speed this up. Oh, I can see something I need to adjust here on this template. So there we go. All right. So I can see some, what would be great here is if I can get back inside of this trending channel. But I won't add unless I get back outside the initial balance. And at the moment, because I have development here, I really need to develop some more up here. Otherwise, not really going to work real well. Okay. All right, so now we're approaching the IB high. Here's what we're going to do. Let's go down here to 1x. We're actually going to take one off. All right, and we're going to defend the base of where this buying imbalance came in. And I still got this stop to add, should we get back outside the IB and challenge where those sellers came in. And we're actually now going to come in and and we're going to defend against rotations back inside of 1 standard deviation. VWAP. Okay. Now, I'm actually going to take this off because I want to see it get on the other side of those sellers. Then I'll get back in. But then if I enter, it's going to be a really, really tight stop. Because if we get out here and enter, again, I should not go back in the IB. Especially in this situation where, we traded above the IB and back, and now we're coming back outside the IB. So when you test that IB a couple times, the more times we test, the less likely we are to return back inside the IB. So if we return one time, that next time out, more likely to go. But I want to make them prove it. Like, trade above that where those sellers were. They eat into some of them. There's still a little bit of it. Let's see if they can get through that. Yeah, seller stepped up again. Okay, new 30. Not quite there. You see some buyers trying. Yeah. So hopefully you see that. Like, what am I making the auction do? I'm making it prove that it gets out there. Otherwise, I'm not interested. It's not an IB go with. That IB go with is outside of the initial balance. So if you're going with the IB extension, you're going outside that initial balance, which means if I'm inside the initial balance, it's not that trade. It can either be IB go with on a pullback, or I mean, it could be an extension fade, it could be something else, but it's not that IB go with. So in this case, we tried the first time, we kind of switched to an IB go with on a pullback, but we took it off when we were at that area where like it needs to stay out. And so same thing, like, can't get back outside there, can't hold. Let's fast forward a little bit more and see if we get an opportunity again to get outside that IB, or we'll just be like, nope, it passed and there wasn't an opportunity there. We're watching this at 10x speed. Still one time framing higher, that's good. If we trade below 83.8, then more than likely we're going to just eat through the initial balance. Okay. Still an inside period. They got close. See if we can get to 82.8, but that would not be a go with. That'd be a pullback. Definitely can see some fight around the prior high, that's for sure. So you can see that reference, right? So that's why we have those on the charts, because they do come into play. Pretty low R vol as well, so not really any strength stepping up here. No real big period deltas as well. Not real great yet. Suggests that we're still going to try to get a chance back in the lower part of the IB. Still no real. We'll run out a little momentum here. Okay, so this is go with on a pullback. Okay, I'm going to keep my size smaller because I still think I could get down here near the opening range to add in. And same deal, if we rotate back up towards IB high, I'll take it off. A little bit of a node there. But nothing really strong that I'm real interested in. Can we get through these sellers up here? Note, I mean, noting how neutral this is. You've got buying excess and selling excess, right? Which is why we've got some fight, and clearly we're balanced right around here. Could be that we spend the rest of the session, just rotating back around. We'll see. There's plenty of time left in the session, but okay, I'm going to take that off. So same deal. Like, we see if we get outside the IB again. If we could make a new 30-minute high, that would also really give me confidence. Okay, this looks promising. Okay, let's slow this down. Now, if we get filled here, we're going to absolutely have a stop at 87.6. This should be one of those that just goes and does not come back. We've got a buyer here trying to step in. But as yet, not strong enough to take out those sellers. Yet. Notice a little bit of skew here, like bullish skew in that 30-minute profile. So I want to see that. Let's maintain that. That'd be great. All right, here we go. Trying. It's going to pop and run. If it does, it's going to go fast. That's why sometimes a buy stop or sell stop can be a really great way to get into something. There's a persistent seller right there, isn't there? But if they get out of the way, here we go. All right, great. So now we're back in. Now where am I going to put my stop? Right below where this buying imbalance is. Yeah, is where I'm going to defend. And if that gets out, then I'm done. I'm not going to take another attempt. This one should go. So let's see if it can hold that area. And eat into that selling excess. If it can, we should easily get to that 93.8-ish area. Definitely see a big step up in the R-vol and the delta, so that's definitely something I want to defend. If we go back through that, I want to be out. And looks like I'm going to be out. Where's that exactly? Let's see here. Yeah, 88.4. It's touchy. The delta for the 15-minute period is good. So, I mean, there's buyers trying, but there is a seller that is just up there at 90, just absorbing all of this and holding this whole thing down, yeah? Until that seller gets out of the way, I mean, we could keep banging up against them. Okay. Yeah. Oh. Still there. Still fighting. And There we go. All right, let's go down to one time. I'm going to go right behind where this big buyer stepped in. Perfect. So that should have taken it out, right? Because it went through that. So that's it. All right. So, let's talk about kind of, some things around this idea. Was less committed to it given the fact that we use so much of the range already. So wanted to be more tactical and, seeing an area of a reference. It's totally okay if you identify an area where there's some fight to make the auction get past that. Like make it prove that it can get past that reference before it goes. You can always add back in with greater confidence that, okay, we got past that. And that, if it's an equity price, it could be a GEX level, or it could just be, we're struggling at this price. I see some imbalance step in. Why is that there? There's somebody that's got a large order. You don't know how big that order is, and it'll be there until it's not, right? But we could still look at the idea and say, hey, is the opportunity here? We actually were able even to cycle through like IB go with versus IBGP. And sometimes you can, use the IBGP to get, into it. If the IBGW doesn't go with it, you can always add back in some size, right? Which makes it fun. That's what we're after is to make this as fun as humanly possible. So that is the IB go with. Initial balance extension go with. So just a reminder, the driving input is that the initial balance has been extended, and the destination that we're looking for initially is 1.5 VIB or a significant off auction reference. If they are in combination with each other, that can work well. And then we're looking at a smaller time frame to try to find an area to join participants that want to go in that direction, and we're defending those areas. We're defending that strength. Particularly outside of the initial balance. So, there's a distinction between, was it an IB go with or an IB on a pullback? The go with is I'm going with strength outside of the initial balance. That's all we need to know. So, I hope that was helpful. And we'll be back with another one of these fairly soon. We'll get the recording out and we'll see what next signal is generated. Cheers.